Mark Fields, President and CEO of Ford Motor. It's very nice to see you in Detroit. We just chatted at CES, but there's always something new to talk about.
Yeah.
For you, it's the Fusion. This is really kind of like a bells and whistles version, several models. What are you hoping to do with the Fusion in 2016? I know your share has been good, but sales were down in 2015.
And that's endemic of the industry. That segment is down a bit, but our share is good. It's the second year in a row we've sold over 300,000 units. Importantly, we're growing our retail share in important markets like California. But essentially, this is the smartest, most technologically packed, and broadest Fusion lineup we've ever had, and we really want to use this to, again, solidify our position in the midsize car market, which still is a very important segment in the industry.
So in terms of some of the technology, for instance, this car can detect a pedestrian, which is the first car that can do that. Why are these technologies so critical right now in the audio industry? You and I talked about this before, but why is this moment the time for all of this?
Well, first off, consumers want more and more safety in their vehicles, whether it's their own safety or for pedestrians, et cetera. They want to be safe in their vehicles, and that's an important consideration. Secondly, when you look at the enabling technologies that are available to us today as a company, and you look at a little bit of like the approach of what Moore's Law is happening, where the capabilities of the sensors and the other component pieces that go into some of these technologies, it's exponentially becoming more and more capable, and the costs are coming down. So those are some of the reasons why we have the opportunity to offer this in the new Fusion.
On the cost side for this year, what are you expecting in terms of incentives broadly?
Well, we think 2016 is going to look a lot like 2015. What we saw in the industry was incentives relatively flat on a year-over-year basis, but within that we saw car incentives go up and SUV and truck incentives tend to be flat, if not somewhat down on some of the segments. And the reason for that on the car side is we're seeing consumers gravitate more towards small and medium-sized SUVs and trucks. And so clearly that's putting a little bit of pressure on the car side. But overall, as we stand back, we think the industry is going to stay healthy in 2016. The state of the consumer is relatively healthy. When you look at things like the latest employment report, wages are still growing, low interest rates, low energy costs. So that's our view for 2016.
So U.S. auto sales did not peak then, even though we had a record in 2015?
We could see some growth in 2016, and part of it is you look at some important segments like full-size pickup segment where our F-Series competes. The biggest correlation to full-size pickup sales is the housing market.
Yeah.
And of course, we still have not seen the housing market come back to pre-recessionary levels, even if you discount for the fact that those days before the recession, there was a little bit of frothiness going on in the marketplace.
Mark, what about China? China was good to Ford last year with some record numbers. Are you concerned at all about what is happening in China right now?
Well, the industry there, or the economy there, is going through a transition. It's going from a industry or a GDP that's been led by industry and investment to one that's more a market-led economy, consumption and services. So as they go through that transition, there'll be some volatility. But we still have our fundamental view of the prospects of the China market in terms of growth is still very good. And we expect this year to be relatively good. And the reason for that is the government cut the purchase tax by 50% in the fourth quarter of last year to support the auto industry. We saw that in December. Our sales were up 27%. And we expect to see that going into the new year, but we'll watch the market very closely.
I want to end on mobility since that is important to you because you also announced a Ford Pass, and that's something that's coming in just a couple of months. So why don't you explain what the thinking was behind the Ford Pass, which is kind of, it's supposed to be like iTunes for cars, which is a pretty lofty goal, you said.
Well, we want to really revolutionize the customer experience for Ford and the auto industry. And if you think about it, the analogy is what iTunes did for music lovers. You had Apple that had an iPod, which was a great product, but then they added iTunes, and it provided that experience for consumers that really delighted them and actually established a real strong relationship between the consumer and Apple. So think about Ford Pass, what iTunes did for music lovers in the music industry, we want Ford Pass to do for the automotive experience and the relationship.
Mark Fields, nice to talk to you again, this time in Detroit. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.